Okay, this is probably the least planned and least organized video I have ever done, but I just finished watching the new Baki episodes, and there's something I just have to talk about. And I suppose to an extent I'm not completely unprepared because CG in anime is something I've wanted to talk about for a long, long time, but I had no plans on doing it tonight. I was working on another video. I saw that these new episodes came out this week. I watched them and it reminded me of this and I just decided I had to do it. So no script, no planning. We're just doing this. I have no idea how this video is going to come together. It's going to be me like switching between I have no idea. So I apologize in advance if this video is fucking unwatchable, but I just got to talk about this. So I suppose if you don't know, it would be beneficial really to give a quick explanation on what CG is in anime. Well, essentially, it's just 3D animation, and it's usually done, I believe, at a much higher FPS than traditional hand animation. Now, we don't specifics don't really matter. The community at large is familiar with what CG is, and even if they couldn't tell you exactly how the technique differs, they could know what's CG. Like they could tell something CG. Now, I'm not a CG hater by no means. I know people probably expect that I am, but you know what they say, only a bitch deals in absolutes. And just because something is CG doesn't mean it's bad, and just because something's traditionally animated doesn't mean it's good. Tower of God is traditionally animated; it looks like shit. And there, I'll show you a good, what I think is an example of good CG in anime. Now I'm going to show you a clip of Baki. Again, you'll have to. I hate working with Netflix, but it's what Baki's on. So I'm going to show you this clip, and you can see. I mean, this is laughable, right? Like that was I mean, look, my God, that is bad. Now, this is a really good example of where CG in anime fails, and that is in detail. I think, at least. I think CG is most noticeable in facial detail. Now, I'm going to put up a picture of this guy from the manga, and to be fair, he's basically all facial detail. I mean, he's one gigantic wrinkle, so he's like the most challenging, but you can see in this anime, which is fully CG, I mean, it looks more like he has scales than anything else. I mean, he doesn't have any texture to his face. It's just lines drawn across a normal man's face. This animation, I mean, this is like inexcusably bad. It's hilariously bad. And this is normally what people think of when they think of CG, right? Like I think a lot of people get like PTSD flashbacks to Berserk in 2016. Now don't get me wrong, that anime was eye-meltingly bad. Like I can't even look at one frame from that anime and think that it's good. But we've come a long, long way since then. I mean, that was years ago. The technique has really gotten better, but this is an example of it done bad. I mean, you can see none of these people, I mean, these are essentially copy and paste. I mean, these two guys right next to each other, in fact, these three guys in a triangle basically look like the exact same person. And that's what I brought up before. Where CG normally fails is in facial detail. So you can see there's like almost no detail on the face. This is about as good as Baki gets, which is just like lumpy face. And to be fair, again, the original manga art style of Baki is pretty lumpy, but obviously CG is just horrible. I could go through and show like a bunch of this episode and whatnot, but I don't think it's really necessary. I mean, that one frame does it all. You can see there's just something about it. I accidentally just showed you another big problem with CG. You'll get, because it's at a higher frame rate, sometimes you'll get big skips like this, which don't really matter when you're watching it, but sometimes it can be a little bit jarring. Like you saw in like one frame, he went from sitting completely down to being all the way out. And there you actually saw what is, in my opinion, the strength of CG, which is movement. It's pretty good when used right to simulate fast movements. Now, I honestly couldn't tell you why. Again, I'm not an animation expert. I've never used 3D animation for this purpose, but from just anecdotal evidence, that seems to be what it's best for. Now, I don't know how this is going to look for you because for some reason Netflix won't let me have two browsers open at the same time with Netflix. So I'm going to switch to what I think is a really good example of CG. And not only are these both CG anime, not only are they both on Netflix, they're actually both very, very, very similar in subject matter. So it's a pretty fitting comparison. Okay, here we are. No surprise, it's Kengan Ashura. I mean, these anime are very similar in genre, but as I'm sure you can already see, there's way more detail on the face. Now, I have a few theories as to why Baki is so incredibly bad. I don't think it's quite as bad as 2016 Berserk, but it's close. I would assume it's because it's being much more cheaply made. But let's just let this play and look at some of the animation. I just realized you guys won't be able to hear sound, but I guess that's fine. But if we just look, wow, what a frame to pause on, dat ass. If we just look, this is clearly stylized much different, right? Like, we can all tell this is a different art style, but already just the level of shading and detail and contour on muscles. Granted, these aren't even, I mean, like, what muscle groups are these? These aren't muscles a real human has. But we can already see the level of detail is way higher. I mean, this is, from what I've seen, top level CG currently in anime. So if we let it play again, we can just see, look at how fluid the animation is. I mean, I'm not going to lie, or I'm not going to sit here and tell you that CG is the new wave and that everything should be CG, because I don't. Again, I think both styles have shortcomings. And so we could sit here all day. In fact, I've done it before and pick apart frame by frame. And that's another big problem of CG is a lot of times if you certain frames look really amazing. Like, I'll throw up a nice picture from Kengan Ashura that's like a still frame just taken directly from the anime. But a lot of times, if you just play and then pause it randomly, you'll get this, which is a lot of motion blur. Now, to be fair, again, here, this is part of the style. They're blurring the background to bring your attention to the foreground, which is this right here that says Ironbreaker. But like I said, I think that this is the current best CG anime. Now, here's a great example. Again, the big downside to CG is facial detailing. And this kind of frame doesn't usually do well in CG. Kengan Ashura sadly uses this, I don't know if you could even call it a motif, but uses this too much where, I mean, this looks ridiculous, right? No one can defend this. I can't defend this as a fan of the anime. You can see his facial hair down here is just like, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 individual hairs that are like 2 millimeters thick. I mean, you can see there's like a complete lack of depth on his eyes. Now, to be fair to Kengan Ashura, this is like a notoriously bad frame or a series of frames on this guy's face. This was meme to hell when it came out. But, you know, I'm being fair. I'm showing you the worst of Kengan Ashura, which is something like this, and the worst of CG, which is just, there's no detailing on his teeth, there's no depth in his face. Even the contour on his cheekbones doesn't look quite as good. But this is a really good example of an anime. You might be able to, you might be able to hear the feedback through my headphones. This is so loud. But this is a really great example of how to use CG, which is you distract when you need to with flashy things on screen. This does what I call the Demon Slayer approach, which is where it has a bunch of cool shit on screen to distract you from bad stuff. We'll compare this with Baki. So let's go back to Baki. We'll choose a different episode this time. So here we are, back with Baki. This is a completely different episode. I don't know if you can see this, but this is actually 2 seasons in difference. So this is a very different episode. So we're at I didn't plan this. This is just a random freeze frame before what I actually want to show you. But again, you can just see this is like the low end of CG where you can see complete lack of detail on the fingers here. This is like something a child would draw. I mean, this is horrible. This is so bad. The fingernails are just, it's terrible. But what I really want to show you is what happens next. So pay attention right here in the background. This is where CG is at its worst, is in detail, and this is a perfect example. I don't know if you could, okay, so you saw it. He looked ridiculous standing there. You see this weird explosion effect. You see how bad this looks. One thing, again, that CG is really bad. Wow, look at, I didn't plan this again, but look at how bad that, these pectoral muscles, first of all, are way too small, way too round, and they don't even look like they're attached to him. And I know I'll get people saying this. Yes, some of this can be attributed to the lumpy art style of Baki. That is completely very true. I mean, you might see a jawline like this for the first time if you're not familiar with Baki and be like, what the fuck is that? That is a baki staple. The problem is, in the manga, it actually looks like muscle, like tight muscle underneath skin. It does just look like weird lumps in this anime. I mean, you can see right here. This is a great example. This is just a big empty void of nothing. There's no texture here. There's no real, I mean, there's shading obviously to show that the light is coming from this direction, but it almost doesn't mean anything because there's no I mean, this just looks like a lump of, this looks like a Ken doll's genitals, meaning that it's completely smooth, no texture, nothing. And this is at its best. I mean, once we zoom out, it gets horrible. This detailing is like as good as it gets with bad CG. I mean, look at how terrible it gets when you zoom out. Look at this guy's face, this guy's weird potato face. This guy in the background has like literally nothing. His whole face is just a little semicircle, or I guess really more of a square. He's got one little swoopy for a nose, a line, and he's done. This guy's got a couple lines on his face, and that's it. It's indescribably bad. This guy's proportions, what in the world? Look at how big his head is compared to his entire body. So again, just to show that there's no such thing as absolutes, I'm going to show you that CG can be used effectively in, of course, Kengan Ashura, because Kengan Ashura is just a million times. Baki sucks ass. I might do a whole video about how much Baki sucks, but we'll see some actual decent slow motion here in a moment. This is already kind of weirdly slow motion. Not really, but we'll see some genuine slow motion in a second. There you go. There's slow motion. See how brief it was? That's how you use it, because when you have a huge downside to your animation technique, it's important to keep those aspects as minimal as possible. Here's a great side-by-side comparison. I mean, they're not similar in characters, but Katahara Metsudo here is like a similar old man type of character, and you can just see, again, this sort of shading is just an art style choice that is like fine. You know, you can like it or dislike it. It's clear that it's intentional. See, the thing is, people might be like, well, you said Tower of God. The thing is, these lines are still complete. This is finished. Anyways, we don't need to talk about that. But you can see there's so much more detail on his face compared to the other old man, and it actually looks like this is a part of his face. Granted, this is a much different art style, but you can see that CG isn't all bad. Anyways, I think that's it for this video. I don't even know if I should post this. I might not post this, to be honest, but I just want to talk about bad CG because CG gets so unfairly shit on just because of primarily, honestly, Berserk. I mean, I get it, guys. Berserk was awful. We don't need to talk about it specifically, but CG in general, I mean, come on, guys, let's give it a chance. I mean, it can look good. It's a little jarring. I will admit, it can definitely be jarring. If you're someone like me who watched like 1,000+ different anime series that were all traditional, then going to a full CG for the first time might be like, whoa, you know, you might get whiplash. But as with most things, if you give them a chance, they can turn out to be pretty damn good. Anyways, this has been my long-winded way of saying, go fucking watch Kengan Ashura. Don't ever watch Baki.